Hey guys, so today we're going to take a look at the 2-hit stunlock mechanic that exists on Dark Souls 3 PvP. Like all of my Soulsborne mechanics videos, this one has a lot of speculation. This is simply a video about my thoughts on why this mechanic exists and why it makes some sense. I will make references to Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne. I will not reference Dark Souls 2 or Demon Souls PvP, as I feel that my knowledge about those games is not deep enough. So, what is the 2-hit stunlock mechanic of Dark Souls 3 PvP? In Dark Souls 3 PvP, the first R1 of any weapon will always true combo into a second R1. On a glance, this does not seem to make a lot of sense. It seems to lead to multiple players stunlocking you to death, and it seems to reward spamminess and a careless style of play. I believe our journey to understand this mechanic should start on Dark Souls 1. In Dark Souls 1, some weapons can stunlock indefinitely an opponent with R1s. The Zweihander, the Gravelord Sword, the Murakumo, among others. Smaller weapons can stunlock you as well. The Shotel R2 or Halberd R1 come to mind. However, not all ultra weapons can do it. Most ultra great swords, great hammers and great axes cannot infinite stunlock you with R1s. It seems that the stunlock timing was not really well balanced for PvP, as among the same class there are differences in stunlocks and even in swing speeds. This makes some weapons of the same class, all else being equal or similar, namely damage, much better than others. This leads to much less weapon diversity in PvP in a game acclaimed, well, for its weapon diversity. Because of the infinite stunlock allowed to some weapons, it is no accident that the Murakumo or the Zweihander are more used than other weapons of the same classes in PvP. But I digress. But how can you avoid being infinitely stunlocked by any of the before-mentioned weapons in Dark Souls? Well, you toggle escape. Toggle escape is a Dark Souls tech that allows you to get out of getting infinitely stunlocked by switching your left or right weapons on the D-pad. It uses the Dark Souls 1 action priority system built into the game. Switching weapons while you are getting hit a second time or after any hit that stunlocks you allows you to break out of the infinite stunlock. I have my doubts if this was an intended mechanic, as the PvE never stunlocks you indefinitely, and there is no in-game mention to this mechanic. The devs might have wanted you to read the damage until your opponent's stamina ran out when fighting certain weapons. This might have been a way to balance the general ineffectiveness of big weapons in PvP because of the single confirmed backstab mechanic of Dark Souls 1 that makes backstabs very easy to perform against ultra weapons. Also, the relative high stability of shields versus the low stamina damage ultra weapons deal, and the fact that two-hand R1s of ultras can be parried in Dark Souls 1, so it might have been a balancing mechanic at first. So because big weapons are easy to counter if they are not going for backstabs, infinite stunlocks could be something that the devs intended to happen. Nevertheless, toggle escape exists, and it has never been patched out of the Prepare to Die edition or the remaster, so even if it wasn't an intended mechanic, the devs thought that it was better that it existed. However, if you look at the normal engagement where you use a toggle escape in Dark Souls 1, the following happens. You get hit, and if poise broken you will toggle escape after eating the second hit. Now, toggle escape does not prevent you getting hit, so although toggle escape prevents an infinite stunlock, it does not prevent you taking damage. If you look to the 2-hit R1 combo on Dark Souls 3, you can see that that is exactly what happens. It seems to me that the devs wanted Dark Souls 3 to have an automatic toggle escape system in order to prevent infinite stunlocking, at least when it comes to ultra weapons. Now, is it better to have an automatic toggle escape or a manual toggle escape system like in Dark Souls 1? Well, it depends who you are. If you are a Dark Souls PvP veteran, maybe the manual toggle escape system is better for you, because you have the knowledge and the habit of toggle escaping. This will give you an edge against a less experienced player. In short, you will toggle escape more times, while your less experienced opponent will get stunlocked to death or until your stamina runs out, whichever comes first. This matter, however, intersects with the concept of the return on skill. I Am Amish made a video a while ago where he referred to this topic. In short, return on skill means that the longer you play the game and the more skilled and experienced you become, the less chance you will get beaten by non-experienced players. Some games reward return on skill more than others. In Dark Souls 1, if you are a very experienced player that knows quite a lot of tech, with a PvP min-max build, you will beat a solo inexperienced player probably more than 90% of times. It's almost always a blowout. This is compounded by several mechanics in the game, such as the armor upgrades not counting for matchmaking purposes in the remaster, as well as the amount of humanity you as an invader have that can increase your defense a lot, among others. Dark Souls 3 does not give the veteran player a lot of return on skill, at least when compared to Dark Souls 1. Incidentally, I believe that this is the reason of the absurd amount of disconnects on invasions on Dark Souls 1, even when compared to Dark Souls 3 invasions. In some sessions, I had more than 50% of disconnects. The disconnectors knew that the chance that they would beat me were, for a lack of a better expression, slim, and that they would have an awful time while getting robbed of their last bits of humanity. Sure, they can play offline, and maybe they should, but it doesn't make a lot of sense to have a game that ensures your death more than 9 out of 10 times whenever you get invaded while playing solo. The thing is, return on skill is a fundamental game mechanic in any video game. It makes people proud of their progress. Sensing your game evolving is what makes people keep playing PvP games. However, in my opinion, the return on skill on Dark Souls 1 is bad both for experienced players as well as for the inexperienced host in a lot of scenarios. If you just destroy your opponent, you will learn nothing. If you get destroyed, you will learn nothing. Return on skill can never be left unchecked, as the risk of leaving it unchecked is invaders getting bored and stop playing the game, and PvE players just quitting the game when you invade them. It ensures that the community dies fast, and that means that the game fails in a few months. A bit like, well, in Dark Souls Remaster. This is heavily compounded by the lack of a skill-based matchmaking system on all of the Dark Souls games PvP, whether in invasions or in the arena. You will fight the dude that picked the game up yesterday or the dude that has been playing the game for years. Because there is no skill-based matchmaking system on any Dark Souls game, I believe that it suits the franchise philosophy better to have a lower return on skill as it exists on Dark Souls 3, especially on invasions. That is not to say that in the arena there shouldn't be ranked matches. I think a lot of the community, myself included, would like to try hard in the arena with people of a similar skill level. All of this to say, and coming back to the manual or automatic toggle escape system debate, that in my opinion a 2-hit stunlock system, or from another perspective, an automatic toggle escape system, makes more sense in Dark Souls, as it makes the game more accessible and fun to a greater number of people, especially when there are evident skill and knowledge gaps between the engaging players, that are not shortened by a skill-based matchmaking system. Okay, so I discussed the 2-hit stunlock system on ultra weapons in Dark Souls, but what about smaller weapons? Does it make sense? While I believe that what happened on the ultra weapon front was an evolution of the manual toggle escape, I believe that the 2-hit stunlock mechanic in smaller weapons is more convoluted, and was, in the end, about picking the lesser evil. Take for example a straight sword in Dark Souls 3. It has a good length, a fast swing speed, and you will always get a second R1 after the first one hit. Should it allow for 2 hits whenever the first R1 connects? A simple solution for this issue would be for these smaller weapons to do double the damage on a swing. There would be no 2-hit stunlock, just 1 hit that did double the damage. The thing is, the 2-hit stunlock system adds some complexity to the game. Now, before you grab your pitchforks and burn me at the stake, hear me out. Swinging 2 times is a risk-reward thing. If you press R1 2 times, you might hit the opponent twice or be left swinging in the air. Missing 2 swings might mean the difference between life and death in an invasion against someone that knows what they're doing. This risk-reward aspect is very clear when fighting people with different skill levels. In this case, this guy is going for several R1s. Yeah, if he hits me, he will get the 2-hit stunlock. However, this is not the place for it. If he had swung only once, he would have been safe. By swinging twice, he gets outspaced. Now I swing only once. Sure, I might have gotten the 2-hit stunlock if I had swung twice and hit him. However, he might have rolled before I hit him. If I swung twice and he double rolled, he would have healed without me being able to stop him. That's why one swing was a good play. Now he rolls. I go for 2 R1s for the stunlock, because I know that I can get him when his iframes run out after the roll. That's the correct play in this case. It's incredibly hard to always get this balance of 1 R1 versus 2 R1s right every time. This happened a bit earlier in the same fight. He heals, and I believe I can punish the heal, so I go for the optimal punishment other than a backstab. I go for 2 R1s and a third, which I whiff. However, he manages to roll twice before I stunlocked him. Also, notice that my second R1 didn't combo into the third, even though he got staggered out of the roll and was not in roll invincibility frames. This is something common to most Dark Souls 3 weapons. Only the first R1 of a chain combos into the second, not the second into the third, etc. In this situation I was greedy by going for 3 R1s and not just staggered R1s, and so he got to double roll and could have healed if he wanted to. I messed up and failed to pressure him, and we restart the fight from full health. This leads me to say that if 1 R1 did all of the damage and didn't stunlock any further, people would have no interest in going for 2 R1s, as people would just roll out after the first R1, leading to an even bigger emphasis on a passive playstyle. If you want to risk 2 R1s to get a stunlock combo, you risk getting exposed or failing to keep the pressure on your opponent. This is especially true in a multiple opponent fight. It's a risk-reward thing. The 2-hit stunlock combo rewards aggression, but increases the risk of retaliation if you whiff, especially if you are fighting multiple opponents, which was the way Dark Souls 3 was designed around. Let's watch some more examples. On this one, I go for just 1 R1. I am fighting against 2 players and they are putting a lot of pressure on me. By hitting just 1 R1, I give myself more time to roll out than if I go for 2 R1s, as the stunlock time of the second R1 after the first one connects is non-existent, because people can roll out of it. So this was the correct play. 1 hit makes them be stunlocked, so I get time to roll away. In this next situation, I go for 2 R1s. This was the wrong play, as I needed to back off, and by going for 2 hits against this player, I get the 2-hit stunlock, yeah, but he rolls into me and roll catches me. I should have gone only for 1 hit and roll out. What I'm trying to say is there is a time to swing twice and a time to swing once. Knowing which is an important skill for a PvP player, and especially for an invader. It adds complexity. However, if I did the damage of 2 R1s in 1 hit, I would never swing twice. I would swing once and roll out. This would mean that the less complex and highly passive game style would be highly rewarded, and that, in my opinion, would be a big problem. What I'm trying to say is that the 2-hit stunlock mechanism allows for some tactic situational choices. There is no evident answer to the question of should I swing once or twice. Sometimes swinging once will serve you better, sometimes swinging twice will serve you better. If 1 R1 would do the same damage of 2 swings, there would be no choice because 1 swing would always be optimal. Another possibility would be to make the second R1 do less damage than the first, but maintaining the 2-hit stunlock. This would also make people swing less. How much less would depend on how much the damage would differ from the first to the second R1. If the second R1 would do 85% of the damage of the first, maybe people would play the same as they do now, with a little mitigation of the disadvantages of the 2-hit combo, especially on smaller weapons. I wouldn't, however, diminish the damage from the first R1 to the second R1 on ultra weapons though, as it's pretty hard to hit your opponents with 2 R1s from an ultra as it is. So in the end, probably only weapons that don't have hyper armor on their swings, straight swords, curved swords, rapiers, scythes, etc., should be nerfed on their second R1 damage. And even so, by not a big amount, as not to make them that much weaker and not nerfed enough on their second R1 to eliminate the incentive to a more complex and aggressive playstyle allowed by the 2-hit stunlock mechanism. On a personal note, and before I would go around changing the 2-hit stunlock mechanic, I would first look at the charge and uncharged R2 damage and speed, which seems too low to warrant use versus 2 R1s. Upping the damage and the speed of the uncharged R2s, for example, and even on weapon arts would make fights more diverse and interesting by giving players solid alternatives to a R1 heavy playstyle. But dude, what about Bloodborne? Bloodborne does not have a 2-hit stunlock mechanism and the game's PvP, netcode aside, works like a charm. That is true, and this question entails a more profound analysis. Let me just say that I love Bloodborne PvP. It's the best PvP in the series in my opinion, and was only brought down by the shitty netcode and the blood gem imbalance, which in my opinion were the reasons Bloodborne PvP never got the recognition it deserved. Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne are, however, very different beasts. Dark Souls 3 weapons are deeply rooted in the weapon class you are using. Weapons from the same class share a ton of fundamental commonalities. That's why when I did Invasion Weapons Guide, I divided the weapons by classes. In order to understand the pros and cons of a weapon, you need to understand its class first. Finally, Dark Souls 3 weapon classes were designed for you to have a fighting chance against any other weapon class without absolutely having to carry a second weapon. Sure, some weapon classes hard counter other weapon classes more than others, but the fight is never impossible if there is a big enough skill gap. The 2-hit stunlock mechanic helps this concept immensely. A good example of this is an ultra weapon against a smaller weapon. The player with the faster weapon will hit you more times. However, if you hit him twice, 3 times, but with the 2-hit stunlock it means just 2 mistakes, with a properly spec'd build at meta levels, and he is dead. If there was no 2-hit stunlock, your opponent would have to do 3 mistakes. By existing, the 2-hit stunlock mechanic allows your opponent only to do 2 mistakes. It's a big difference, and this buffs big weapons a lot. Bloodborne weapon ecosystem is much different. There are no weapon classes. There is only each weapon. Each weapon has its own class. And yes, some weapons share some commonalities. Ludwig's Holy Blade, when untransformed, plays very similarly, if not the same as the untransformed Kirkhammer's Straight Sword, even if they warrant different combos with the transformed attacks. But at large, each weapon is its own complete thing. This means that from a game design standpoint, the two games are very different. From a combat standpoint, most weapons in Bloodborne have the flexibility to be different tools for different scenarios. This means that you do not need an R1 stunlock system. The idea is to use your weapon own ability to transform to switch up the dynamics of the fight. If you are playing with the transformed Ludwig's Holy Blade against an opponent with a fast weapon and you are being ass whooped, you can change to the untransformed mode and try to change the dynamics. In Dark Souls 3, if you have an ultra great sword, you are very limited against a good opponent. You cannot really change anything in the fight without using other weapon. All of this to say that in Bloodborne, there is only slow weapons by option. In Dark Souls 3, some weapons are always slow, no matter how you play with them. The two-hit stunlock mechanism, however, helps to bridge the lack of flexibility some weapons have, especially the big ones versus the fast ones, making big weapons more viable than they would be if there was no two-hit stunlock system. Now I'd like to hear from you guys. What do you think about the two-hit stunlock system in Dark Souls 3? You think that what I'm saying makes sense? Please write your opinion down below. One thing that I'm proud of this channel is that a lot of people that watch my videos are very good players or people that are really interested in invasions in Souls PvP. Your ideas are useful, as we all can learn something from one another, and your opinion means a lot to me. Anyway, thanks for watching, Raven out.